Hey there, are you taking the SAT this upcoming November 8th, 2025? If so, you've come to the right video. My name is Kristina of Ivy Lunch Test Prep. For the last 15 years, I've helped high schoolers all around the globe dramatically raise their SAT and ACT test scores and ultimately land spots at the colleges of their dreams. So today I'm going to share with you my 10 different predictions for question types and problems that I think you will probably see this coming November SAT. Ready to get started? I am. So here's how I'm going to structure this video. So I am going to go through all 10 of my predictions. I'm going to have 5 reading writing predictions, 5 math predictions. When I tell you about each one, I'm also going to show you an example question so that you can pause the video, try it out yourself, write down your answer, and then at the end, I am going to actually give you the answers to all 10 of the practice questions. Got it? Okay, so prediction number one, and the first of the reading writing predictions, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a paired passage in the reading writing modules. So this will come after the sentence completions when you have like the traditional reading comprehension questions, and they can ask all sorts of things, but I'm pretty sure you're going to see one where it has like text one and then text two. And so you've got like two different paragraphs, but they're going to specifically ask you something. Now, here is the trick with these paired passage questions. Treat each one as if it's a separate person, okay? And maybe the people agree with each other about the topic, maybe they disagree, but it's really important that you just keep them straight in your head. So you are going to read the question stem, that is the actual question it's asking right before your 4 answer choices. You're going to read that part first, and you're going to get very clear, like, oh, wait, is it asking me what I think the first person thinks about what the second one said, or what the second one thinks about the first? If you have to actually point with your fingers on the screen just to make sure you don't mess it up, please do. But once you just sort that out, then I recommend actually reading the text in the order that they gave them to you and then answering the question. So I'm going to share my screen now so you can have an example question and you can pause this video and you can try it out, and then we'll do answers at the end. Okay, here you go. We have, based on the text, how would Barenfeld and colleagues text 2 most likely respond to the conventional wisdom discussed in text 1? Now we're going to read in order. Text 1, ecologists have long wondered how thousands of microscopic phytoplankton species can live together near ocean surfaces competing for the same resources. According to conventional wisdom, one species should emerge after outcompeting the rest. So why do so many species remain? Ecologists' many efforts to explain this phenomenon still haven't uncovered a satisfactory explanation. Now we read text 2. Ecologist Michael Barenfeld and colleagues have connected phytoplankton's diversity to their microscopic size. Because these organisms are so tiny, they are spaced relatively far apart from each other in ocean water and, moreover, experience that water as a relatively dense substance. This in turn makes it hard for them to move around and interact with one another. Therefore, says Barenfeld's team, direct competition among phytoplankton probably happens much less than previously thought. So pause, answer the question, and I will see you at the end for answers. Okay, so prediction number 2 is that I think you're going to have several logically completes questions. So just to recap, we have sentence completions in the reading writing modules first, your traditional standard reading comprehension questions, then all these claims questions. And then sometimes at the end of those, before we get to the grammar, we have logically completes. Now, many times on a test, we'll have one module, you might not even have a single logically completes, or maybe you only have one, and then maybe on the other you have, 1 or 2. I think you might have more of them on this coming November test. I think you might like have 2 or 3, maybe in each module. So I want you to actually make sure you're good with how you go about this question type. Okay, so as I briefly mentioned, you know when it happens and what you are going to do the task, if you will, is you are reading the text to figure out, well, what is the claim or what is the overarching theme or the abstract concept that the people are trying to get across. And then you're going to logically complete it. That usually means like completing an example or showing how that concept or that conclusion works in real time. Okay. So that is your task at hand. So you're looking for the big picture first, and then the logically completes part is kind of spelling it out more in detail form. So I'm going to share my screen, show you an example, and give you some practice. Okay, so this is your example question 2. Which choice most logically completes the text? The domestic sweet potato descends from a wild plant native to South America. It also populates the Polynesian islands, where evidence confirms that native Hawaiians and other indigenous peoples were cultivating the plant centuries before seafaring first occurred over the thousands of miles of ocean separating them from South America. To explain how the sweet potato was first introduced in Polynesia, botanist Pablo Munoz Rodriguez and colleagues analyzed the DNA of numerous varieties of the plant, concluding that Polynesian varieties diverged from South America ones over 100,000 years ago. Given that Polynesia was peopled only in the last 3,000 years, the team concluded that, pause the video, answer the question, and then we'll do answers at the end. Okay, prediction number 3, and now we move on to grammar. So I have seen this question a lot and heard about it a lot from my students who have taken the test recently. And so I just think you're probably going to see one, maybe even 2 of these. Okay. So it's in the standard English conventions block of questions. So grammar, but it's specifically a subject verb agreement question. But here is the catch. If you look at the answer choices, right, and you're just like, oh, wait a second, let me just see, like, is each answer choice singular or plural? You'll see that like 3 of them are singular and 1 is plural, or 3 of them are plural and 1 is singular. And you should be going with the one that is alone. So if 3 are plural and 1 is singular, chances are the answer is singular. Now you have to actually look at the question and find the subject and, confirm that it is a singular subject, or, vice versa. If 3 of your answer choices were singular verbs, but then 1 is plural, my bet is that the plural one is the answer, but you still got to confirm. You still have to actually find the actual one word that is the subject. Is it a plural noun or plural pronoun? So I'm going to show you what this looks like. It's kind of hilarious because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And like lately, I've noticed it's come up like easily 2 times per test. So some easy points for you if you can spot it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can see. Okay, we know it's grammar because it literally says conforms to the conventions of standard English. And I look and they're all verbs, right? One says were, have been, has been, are. So I'm going to shut up right now. You can pause. You can try the little trick I told you, but make sure to actually read it, write your answer down, and then we'll check at the end. Okay, so now to my November 2025 SAT prediction number 4, which is also a grammar prediction. So I have noticed recently that the SAT really likes to ask like tricky transition word questions. And they don't always happen in the questions that say which one gives the most logical transition. Like sometimes it happens in the standard English convention questions, right? Reason being is because the type of question I'm going to show you, you have to correctly identify how the transition word is being used, because according to how it's going to be used, that's going to affect if a clause is going to be dependent or independent. And then that's going to then determine what punctuation you're going to need to use. Okay. So specifically, what I'm talking about here is there are some words, like though is a very common one, where depending on how you use it, it could be what we call a subordinating conjunction. Like it could dumb down the clause and turn what was a complete clause into a dependent. Or if you use it elsewhere in the sentence and you separate it with commas, then it would then act as if it's extra information, like an adverb. So in that case, it is not affecting if the clause is complete or not. Um, Example, if I were going to say, like, she was thirsty, she did not drink the water, like I have those two ideas. They go against each other. I'm going to want something that contradicts. But depending on which word and where I place it in which one of the clauses, it affects, like, are these still two complete clauses and I need to punctuate accordingly? Or is one of them now dumbed down and it's now dependent? And then I have to punctuate according to that. So if I were to use the though at the beginning of one of those, like though she was thirsty, see what I just did there? She was thirsty was complete. The moment I put though in the beginning, though she was thirsty, it now dumbed it down. It's now a dependent clause. So then I'd have to have a comma and then the complete clause of she refused to drink the water or whatever it is I said. Okay. Now, if I use that very same word, though, but instead I used it surrounded by commas, usually in the middle or towards the end of one of the clause, then it's going to be treated like it's extra information, like it's an adverb. Then it will not affect if the clause is complete or not. So this is what that might sound like. She was thirsty, period. She did not drink the water, comma, though, period. Does that make sense? How same word, but because of where I use them and how I punctuated, it affected if it changed the clause to dependent or if it left the clause as complete or independent. And then you punctuate accordingly. So I've seen this pop up. It's really nuanced, but it would be an awesome point, and I don't want you to get tricked. So I'm going to share my screen and show you so you can try it out. Okay, so is going to be your question number 4, and I'll read it for you if you like, but you can pause, answer it, and then we'll do answers at the end. With the development of new technologies that use natural resources more efficiently, the overall consumption of those resources might be expected to decrease. Economists have observed that improvements in efficiency often correlate negatively with resource conservation, though efficiency gains, lowering the cost of use, may increase demand to the extent that resource consumption ultimately rises. I read all the way through to not sway one way or the other with punctuation, but pause and do the question now. Okay, so our 5th prediction and the last of the reading writing predictions that I think you're going to come across on November 8th, 2025 on the digital SAT is going to be one of the research note questions. So these are the ones at the very end of each reading writing module. They're the ones that have bullet points. But here's the deal. Each one asks you a very, very specific to that question thing or task to do. Now, you always are going to see these, but I think that you are going to see one or more of this type of question where you have multiple answer choices that are in fact correct according to the bullet points, but you have to discern between it's correct, but does it answer every little part of the question that it asked me? Or is it talking about 2/3 of the question it asked me, but it left off a little bit? So even though you like it, even though it's true, even though it didn't commit a faux pas, it didn't answer every last bit of the question, and that is why it's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example for you to try. Okay, so here is the sample for you to try. So for these, you read question stems first. So the student wants to make a generalization about the kind of study conducted by Glickman, Brown, and Song. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? And now let's look at the notes. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. British musicians John Lennon and Paul McCartney shared writing credit for numerous Beatles songs. Many Lennon-McCartney songs were actually written by either Lennon or McCartney, not by both. The exact authorship of specific parts of many Beatles songs, such as the verse for In My Life, one of my favorite songs, by the way, is disputed. Mark Glickman, Jason Brown, and Ryan Song used statistical methods to analyze the musical content of Beatles songs. They concluded that there is 18.9% probability that McCartney wrote the verse for In My Life, stating that the verse is consistent with Lennon's songwriting style. Okay, pause, answer the question, and then we are going to move on to math. Okay, so how are those first 5 predictions for you? Did you try out all the questions? So now I have a question for you, and that is there anything that you've seen on a recent test that you're like, what in the world? Can you help me with that? If so, let me know. Write it in the comments. I'll read. And then if I can make a future video and make content for you to address the specific concerns you have, I'm happy to do so. And while you're at it, just go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. And then that way, every week when I post my latest video about SAT or ACT or college applications, tips, tricks, updates, or hacks, you'll be the very first to know. Okay, so now we are on to prediction number 6 and the first of our math predictions for today. And I think you're going to see a scatterplot question. I do. And in the scatterplot question, I think you're going to have to identify what the slope is of the best fit line or the line of best fit. Maybe they have a line on there and you're supposed to figure out the equation for it. Maybe there is no line drawn in and you're just supposed to look at the various dots and figure out what that equation for the line of best fit or just the slope thereof might be. So when you are doing these, my biggest tip for you is to try and locate like dots or data points, or if they give you the line of best fit already, try to find what we call lattice points. And those would be points where you don't have to guess, is that 3.3? Like it's on the grid. It's like 3, right? It's 4. It's like a nice integer number. It's on the actual grid lines. So you don't have to guess so much. So I would try to use points like that. If they do not have a line of best fit for you to follow and you're just looking at dots, try to pick dots that are as close to the center as you can. Don't pick ones that are super far up or below where you would draw that line of best fit. Like you don't want the outliers to be determining your slope. So I've talked too much. Let me share my screen and then you can give it a try for yourself. And this is your question number 6. So here we go. Which of the following equations is the most appropriate linear model for the data shown in the scatter plot? So I will stop talking and you will pause this, answer the question, and then we will check at the end. Okay, so prediction number 7 and the second of the math predictions for the November 8th, 2025 digital SAT is, I think you're going to see at least one compound interest problem. So compound interest is when, say, a population is growing or you've invested money and it grows at a certain percent each year, or you're losing an amount at a certain percent each year. And so basically, there's a certain way we go about it. There's a specific formula and you need to be familiar. And you need to be familiar specifically with where you put your initial amount, how you are going to write out the percent that it is either increasing or decreasing every year, quarter, month, whatever the time may be, and how you are going to put the time and where it goes. So I'm going to share my screen to show you the formula so you can refresh your memory if you don't already know. Okay, so this is a page from my digital SAT math cram plan, which is part of my ultimate guide for the digital SAT math, which is a video and ebook course that you can get on my website. And I'm happy to include the link below, but I just want to show you this, right? So when you're dealing with problems involving investing money, population growth, or decay, you're dealing with a compound interest problem. So here are the points. If you are growing by a certain percent, then obviously I need to be multiplying by a number larger than 1. So my final amount is larger than what I started with, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be multiplying by 1 plus that percent increase as a decimal. However, if something is decreasing or decaying by a certain percent, Obviously, my final amount is smaller than what I started with, right? So I'm going to be needing to multiply by a number that's less than 1, so between 0 and 1. So I'm specifically going to be multiplying my original number by 1 minus the percent decay as a decimal. So here's the formula, right? So the final amount is going to be equal to my starting value, or the initial amount, times, again, 1 plus or minus the rate, depending on if it's growing or decreasing, and the rate is as a decimal, and it's raised to the power of time, usually in years. Some things to note. If I am doubling, right, I don't need to know the initial and the final. I know that the final is twice my initial. So I can literally just simplify it to this. 2 equals 1 plus the rate as a decimal, because I am getting bigger, right? So I know I'm adding. And that's raised to the power of time. Now, if I'm having something, I know I'm ending up with something smaller than what I started with. And I know that it's 0.5 will be equal to, and it's 1 minus the rate as a decimal raised to the power of time. Time is a number of years. Now, this is the part that I have definitely seen some questions on, and that is sometimes I am doing the compounding part more or less than once a year. So I'm going to change up the equation in that case. So like say I am compounding monthly. That means I'm doing the actual multiplication of this every month, which means it happens 12 times in a year. However, I don't get my whole, whatever it is, 24%. I don't get that every single month. No. I'm going to divide that by 12. I only get 2% per month, but it just happens more often. So the way that that's going to look is my final amount will be equal to the initial value times, and it'll be 1 plus or minus, right? Depending on if I'm increasing or decreasing, the rate as a decimal divided by n, and then my time is going to be raised to the power of time times n. And this is what I mean. N is going to be 12 if I'm compounding monthly. N is going to be 4 if I'm compounding quarterly, right? N is going to be 365 if I am compounding daily. Okay. So again, you can get that in my digital SAT math course. But I'm just showing it for you, showing it to you right now so that it can help you answer this question. So now let me give you a practice question for you to try. So this is going to be your practice question number 7. A model predicts that the population of Bergen was 15,000 in 2005. The model also predicts that each year for the next 5 years, the population P increased by 4% of the previous year's population. Which equation best represents this model, where x is the number of years after 2005, for x is smaller or equal to 5? So pause, try it out, answers at the end. Okay, so for my 8th prediction and my 3rd of the math predictions, I think you're probably going to see on this November SAT some sort of question that makes you have to convert either between degrees to radians or radians to degrees. So just to recap, degrees and radians are 2 different ways of figuring out how big an angle is in geometry and trig, right? So it's kind of like when we're talking about the weather, we have Fahrenheit and we have degrees Celsius, and they're both different ways of figuring out how hot or cold it is outside, but you have to convert one to the other. And one of them, like if you're in the States, Fahrenheit probably like means something to you, and you would have to convert, to understand what it is in Celsius. But maybe if you're in Europe, degrees Celsius is what means something to you. So you'd have to convert to understand what Fahrenheit meant. So it's similar to that, okay? And it's very simple. 180 degrees, and that means a straight line of an angle, is the same as pi radians, okay? Pi, remember, this is an actual number. It's approximately 3.14159, blah, blah, blah. It never ends. It's irrational, but it's a little over 3 radians, okay? So this also means that if you go a full circle around, that's 360 degrees, that's going to be 2 pi, or approximately 6.29, blah, 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 right? Radians. So it really is a number. It's not just a variable in Greek. Okay. So with that, I'm going to share my screen now that I've refreshed your memory of the conversion between radians and degrees and let you try one out. Okay. So this is your question number 8. So the measure of angle R is 2 pi over 3 radians. The measure of angle T is 5 pi over 12 radians greater than the measure of angle R. What is the measure of angle T in degrees? So you may pause, do this, and we'll check at the end. Okay, so prediction number 9 for the November 8th SAT and my 4th math prediction is I'm pretty sure you're going to see a transformation of functions question, right? Where you're given a function and then it tells you it moved up or down or left or right or something got multiplied by something. And you either have to understand what the transformation means in equation form or use the equation to say what that would look like in graph form. So as a quick recap, I'm going to share my screen and show you the most common ways a function can be transformed. So again, this is a page from my digital SAT math cram plan, which you can find in my ultimate guide for the digital SATs math section, which is a course on my website. So here we go. So sometimes a single number will completely alter the way a function is graphed on the XY coordinate plane. Yes. So these are the common ways that we can alter a function. So now this is an important thing. If the number is inside the parentheses with the X, then the math you see is the opposite of what you do. And also, if it has to do with X, it has to do with things left and right. So it has to do with horizontal. If it is outside, it is not in parentheses with the X, then what you see is what you get, and it has to do with the Y value or the function and how it is vertically up or down, okay? So if I have the function and I just like add a number at the end, I literally move it up C units. What you see is what you get. I have a function, I subtract a number at the end. I literally, what you see is what you get. I move it down C units on the plane, okay? Now, if I have a function of, and then it's x plus 2, right? I'm going to do the opposite of what you see. I'm going to do not 2 to the right. I'm going to do 2 to the left, okay? If I have x minus a number and it's in with parentheses, then I'm going to move that many units to the right. If the entire function is just negative, I'm going to flip it upside down over the x-axis. If the negative is in with the X, I'm going to flip it left or right over the Y-axis. Okay, so there are more, but those are the most common, and I bet you're going to see those. So on that note, I'm now going to share my screen and again, and I will show you a question for you to try. So this is your question number 9 to try out. The function f is defined by f of x equals 7x cubed. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x is the result of shifting the graph of y equals f of x down 2 units. Which equation defines function g? Pause, give it a try, and we'll check in a moment at the end. Okay, so for our final prediction for the November 8th digital SAT in 2025 and my 5th math prediction, I think you're going to have a tricky exponent problem. So exponent power roots problem, okay? And I think I would make sure that I have reviewed all my exponent rules, right? So when you're multiplying the two numbers together, you add the exponents. When you're dividing the two numbers together, you subtract the exponents. When we have power of a power, we multiply the exponents. Those are the common ones. Make sure you know about negative exponents and fractional exponents. So a negative exponent means that whatever it is in the wrong place. So if I had k to the negative second power, the negative in the exponent is telling me that, oh, k squared is in the wrong place. Well, currently it's just a number. It's by default, it's in a numerator. It should be in a denominator. So it should be 1 over k squared. So that would be a negative exponent. Now, fractional exponents. Here's the thing. The denominator of your exponent is going to be what root you are taking, okay? And then the numerator of your exponent stays with the base. So if I have k to the 3 halves power, then the denominator is 2, so that's a square root. The 3, the numerator of my fraction, stays with the k, so it would be square root of k cubed. Does that make sense? And if you have something that is, a root and it has some weird root it's taking, remember, I can convert that back to fractions, right? I can convert that back to a fractional exponent. The root is the denominator. Whatever is the exponent of the base that's inside the root is the numerator. And just like any fraction, I can reduce them. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you the last question for you to try. Okay, so this is your question number 10. Pause the screen and give it a shot. Which expression is equivalent to a raised to the 11th 12th power, where a is greater than 0? Awesome. So how did you do? Did you try all 10 questions? So as promised, now I'm going to give you the answers to the 10 questions that you just tried. Okay, so for prediction number 1, that one is A. Question 2, C. Question 3, also C. Question 4, also C. Question 5, D as in dog. Question 6, B as in boy. Question 7, D as in dog. Question 8 is C. Question 9, D as in dog. And question 10 is B as in boy. How did you do? Let me know in the comments below. So I hope this video really helped you prep for the November 8th digital SAT. And if you need some more resources, I actually have something perfect for you. I actually have a free masterclass, and it's called The 3 Biggest Mistakes to Avoid on the Digital SAT's Reading and Writing section and how to fix them. So check it out in the links below. Good luck to you on November 8th. Let me know how it goes.